Welcome everyone to the HB737 Commission for PFAS. My name is Rosemary Wong. I'm chair of the commission. Want to welcome everyone, and we are not at a quorum as of yet. So items on the agenda that require a vote, I'll delay that until we get more people. But I'm calling this meeting to order at 10:02. I'm going to skip down to number 5 on our agenda, which is a legislative update from Representative Mooney. Representative Mooney, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The chart is being filled in relatively quickly now that we're in March. Of the 13 bills we've been tracking, so far, 4 of them look very promising in terms of moving forward very quickly. Some are in interim study and the like, but 4 are moving along to the next body. I just want to point out a couple of bills, one of which is the soil bill. That is number, let me just get it correctly here, 1547. So the next step there is that there is a Division 2 Finance work session scheduled for this coming Monday at 2 p.m. And I know I will be there as the prime sponsor, as well as Mr. Wimsat. I've touched base with him, but not to be concerned. There's no financial impact on this bill. I've already talked with the finance chairman and let her know, give her a heads up on this. So it's a formality that House Bill 1547 is referred to a division of finance, but I do not anticipate any issue with regard to the bill getting through finance. So certainly I'll keep everybody updated, but that's what that is. And if you'd like to either attend the hearing in Finance Division 1 on Monday or sign in online, that would be great. Again, that's going to be House Bill 1547 in Division 2 of Finance this Monday, the 14th at 2 p.m. House Bill 478, that is the one relative to filters 4 and 5, operations and maintenance of filters 4 and 5 here in Merrimack. That, as you recall, made it through the House. We're still waiting on a Senate scheduling date for when that hearing will be in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. So with great anticipation, we're waiting for that date. So more to come on that.
Representative Mooney, if I could just interrupt you for a second, do you know what the Senate deadline is? Maybe Senator Daniels knows for when House bills have to get through the Senate.
I believe that all the bills need to be that are going to finance need to be out this week. We in finance need to have ours out. I think the latest is the 22nd. So our last session day is the 31st.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry, go ahead and continue, Representative Mooney.
No problem. I just want to also just quickly bring your attention to House Bill 1185. Representative Rung, that was your bill, and I know it's been amended, I believe, since we last met. So I didn't know if perhaps you wanted to make a remark on the amendment, as well as House Bill 1546. That was Representative Boyd's bill, and that too was recommended out of committee with an amendment, but appears to be going forward. So just want to bring everyone's attention to those 2 bills that have been amended.
Yes, House Bill 1185 is the bill I submitted that would allow, it's enabling legislation that would allow municipalities to regulate PFAS that's coming into wastewater treatment plants. It was amended after the public hearing to be more specific about regulations on private septic haulers bringing the residential waste, so that residential waste wouldn't be held to the same regulatory level that that commercial industrial waste would be. I think it's a very important bill because if companies are not able to have PFAS in their wastewater stream, they're more likely going to be reducing the use of it in their process. So it's sort of a backdoor way of reducing PFAS that comes into those industrial commercial streams. Yeah.
Excellent.
yeah.
So the amendment didn't change it.
No. It just
Negative.
it removes a lot of the testing requirements on residential septic. So instead of having to have them tested as often as commercial industrial waste coming in, they're as long as it's just residential waste, it's not held to that standard.
Perfect. And then just lastly in my report is House Bill 1422. No recommendation yet, so we'll continue to watch that. But as for everything else, it should be pretty complete. And if you don't have the link to the site, Ron, I think I just sent it to you moments ago. But certainly if you don't have a link to the chart, let me know and we'll correct that right away. So with that, that's the latest on the legislative report. Thank you all, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you very much, Representative Mooney. Now that we have a quorum, I'm going to return to item number 2 on our agenda. Last week, I sent everyone the minutes. If you remember, the January minutes weren't completed to give the commission enough time to review them. So I'd like to take this opportunity to call for a vote on those minutes. Is there someone willing to make a motion on the January minutes?
I will. I'll move that they are adopted.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Are there any corrections, edits, or anything to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. We're not going to do a roll call, but if you could raise your hands, I believe everybody's on video. So if you raise your hands, if you are supporting the motion. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Going on to the third item on the agenda, approval of the February minutes. And I want to thank Representative Healy for taking those minutes. And today our scribe is Ms. Allen, and I'll be supporting you, Ms. Allen. You don't have to worry. We won't catch you. So is there a motion to accept the February minutes?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Dunn. Are there any corrections to those minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes as submitted, please raise your hand. Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Then we've had this on a couple agendas. I want to kind of wrap it up today, but as I discussed at the last meeting and a meeting previous to that, I'd like to submit a letter on behalf of the commission to the CEO of Saint-Gobain North America and also to Commissioner Scott, requesting that the consent decree, the outer boundary be expanded to include areas that we know have contaminated drinking water due to Saint-Gobain's activities. I'm not sure that it will have a satisfactory outcome. I'm not sure they're going to say, oh, the commission wants us to, let's go ahead and do it. But I think we need to make that statement that we need to acknowledge that that outer boundary is not capturing all of the areas of contamination. So I sent the draft letter to you last week. Actually, it was in our February meeting. I didn't get any feedback from anybody on it. So what you have now is what I shared with you in February. So does anyone have any comments about that letter? Any changes, any concerns about it being mailed out? Okay, seeing none, so my plan is to get a motion to approve the letter as submitted. I'll work with House Committee Services to get it typed and mailed out. I'll work on that next week, and I'll sign it as the chairperson of this commission. So that's my plan. Are you moving that, Ms. Murphy?
So moved. Yes.
I'll
All right.
second it.
Okay, Mr. Dunn seconds it. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, yes, I expected that, Mr. Wimsatt. Okay, so, but the motion passes, so thank you very much. Going on now, we're up to DES update. Mr. Wimsatt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. So the update for this month, as far as activity goes, you know, the main thing we've been working on is we're actively engaged in ongoing negotiations to resolve, you know, individual homes being provided with alternate water within the consent decree area. And, you know, I'm not able to report that we're there yet, but I'm very optimistic that we're going to be coming to convergence on that soon. So I'm hoping that by the next meeting, we'll have something more concrete to report on that. As far as water supply sampling goes, as reported during the last month's meeting, Saint-Gobain has presented, you know, their work plan for residential water sampling in 13 addenda. And I provided the statistics associated with that at the last meeting. Last week, Saint-Gobain submitted an addendum 14, but then they retracted it because they want to amend it. I think they want to add additional homes for sampling to it. So, so we're waiting for that addendum to be submitted. But the statistics that I have are still updated because we do get a biweekly report from Golder with respect to you know, where they're at in terms of the totals. So how many properties, the number of properties identified for sampling remains the same as the report from last time because we don't have the new addendum yet, and that's 3,644. But there are some changes to the number of access agreements. 3,468 access agreements were sent out, and the return rates ticked up a little bit to about 68%. And we do that number represents about 64 more than I reported during the February report. And then 2,155 samples have been collected from water supply wells in the region. And that represents 57 more than the February report. And then 955 properties have been offered bottled water, and that's 8 more than the February report. Now, the majority of properties within the CD area have been addressed by the work plan and the addenda that have been submitted. There remain about 200, maybe a little more than 200 properties in the CD area that have not been sampled. And that number excludes about 300 disputed properties that are inside the CD area, but they're located within buffer zones that Saint-Gobain has identified as areas that they think could have been impacted by other specific sources of PFAS in those areas. So that's an area we're not necessarily in step with them on that. We're working to try to resolve that. So that's something that I'll, you know, hope to, you know, be able to report on soon, you know, later in terms of how we get those properties sampled and get that accomplished. We expect that the remaining properties that are not in dispute, that 200 or so, will be addressed in a few additional addenda that would be submitted over the next few months. Additionally, just to be clear, and I've mentioned this before, there are numerous property owners that declined to have their wells sampled, who were identified, were offered the opportunity on at least 2 occasions to have their wells sampled, and have declined to have that done. So at some point, presumably in the future, they could choose to be sampled. So that could include the number, that could increase the numbers. As far as site investigation goes, Saint-Gobain's consultant, this is kind of something we've been saying for some time. It's drawing near as the spring rains come. Their consultant will be conducting the post, you know, RTO stormwater sampling. And that timing is dependent on confirmation of the effectiveness of the RTO, which we're converging on, and safety concerns working around the Merrimack River. So we would expect that this spring we will see the post-RTO stormwater sampling occurring. And then related to that, the Air Division's update, and you'll note, I think many of you know who follow the minutes that are provided are actually I essentially provide a transcript of my remarks, if you will, to the clerk, and those get published as the minutes. So I'm not going to go over all this, but in the minutes, for ease of reference for you, I've included, there were a number of links to documents that the Air Division has been exchanging with Saint-Gobain on the RTO issue. And just for ease of reference, I'm going to include those in the written comments. And you may recall that last time I talked about the letter of deficiency that was issued and a number of submittals that Saint-Gobain provided in response to that. So the links to those will remain in this month's minutes as well, just for ease of reference. But the new news is that Saint-Gobain submitted some supplemental information regarding the letter of deficiency in a letter that was dated February 8th of 2022. So that was just before our last meeting, and I don't think that news made it into my remarks. So what I've done, just if you are following the minutes carefully for this, what I've done is I put in bold italics the new information for this month, so it helps you kind of sort out what you may have already read before versus what is new information. So that's just kind of a program note to give you an idea how to best interpret those. Also, so we reviewed those submittals along with the monitoring plan since March of 2020. And there are a bunch of responses that I outlined last time. But in response to a number of January letters that I described last month, Saint-Gobain submitted a revised air permit application and air pollution control equipment monitoring plan on February 28th. So we're currently reviewing that information and preparing an application review summary for that. Let's see, and in addition, as I think you know, as part of their responsibilities, Saint-Gobain is conducting monthly rainwater sampling events. And I wanted to keep you apprised of that. So those documents, there'll be a hot link in the minutes to those documents that are associated with that. The most recent monthly monitoring plan letter from Saint-Gobain is dated February 14th. And there has not been a more recent rainwater study results letter since January 28th. So the information I provided last time is really not been updated since then. We expect to get that new report soon. I think that was due to winter weather and basically not an opportunity to do any rainwater sampling during that period. I will tell you that aside from the first monitoring events that occurred last August and early September, I'm happy to say the rainwater sampling analysis has shown non-detect for the sampling points at the facility. So that's been encouraging. And as I mentioned last time, we also conducted an inspection of the facility on January 6th to review the on-site records pertaining to the use of the bypass stack and the RTO. And the department has requested and received information as a follow-up to the inspections, but a final report on the inspection has not been finalized by DES as of today's date. I would expect that probably by our next monthly meeting, we'd have a link to a finalized report on that. And then so as a result, and again, as reported last time, as a result of initial comments from the department to Saint-Gobain on the stack test report from the September 2021 stack test, BAR Engineering submitted a revised stack test report on January 31st. And we've submitted additional questions to Saint-Gobain and BAR in a March 1, 2022 letter. And we're awaiting a response from the facility and its consultant on that letter. So again, there'll be links to these various documents in the minutes so that you can look at them. But that, I guess, gives a summary of what's new from the Air Division. And with that, I think that concludes my my summary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wimsett. Are there any questions for Mr. Wimsett? Yes, Ms. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Wimsett, can you share, I know there's probably some members of the public listening in, what actions DES plans to take to resolve the issue of those disputed homes and in what time frame? Maybe homeowners can expect some resolution of that disputed status?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can give you a time frame, but basically there's some daylight between Saint-Gobain's position and the department's position on this, and we think that really any areas within the consent decree regardless of whether there may be a potential alternate source of PFAS contamination, that any places, any locations within the consent decree have the potential to have been impacted by air emissions from the plant. So our position is that all of those homes or all of those wells should be eligible for sampling, and that's something we're hoping to resolve. I can't give you a date on when we get there, but our expectation is that we will get there and we will get those sampled.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wimsatt? Oh yes, Mr. Bendazian.
Mike is on. If I could just make a comment, Mike, and I don't know if it will be helpful in negotiations on alternate water, but in 2008 we saw a similar spike in energy oil prices, and what happens with road construction and reconstruction, water line construction, is a tremendous amount of inflation. Because of steel prices, asphalt, and diesel fuel. And while diesel fuel can come down, as we saw, in the last 14 years, those other prices never seem to come down. And I know in our town, and I'm sure our other towns in this group are going out to contract now. Hopefully they can extend some contracts, but if Saint-Gobain is going to do work that involves putting a shovel in the ground, those costs are going to go up tremendously for every day of delay that we see. So just passing that along. I know all our communities are going to be struggling with road maintenance costs as we go forward this year.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Senator Daniels.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on Ms. Murphy's question to Mr. Wimsatt. So many have already allowed testing of the wells, and you've got those 200 that have not. Is there any kind of a deadline for those that have not to give permission for testing to be done? Otherwise, they would not be part of any kind of remediation?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Senator. I think in terms of before an area gets addressed with alternate water, and basically the two ways that we address these wells with alternate water is either through extension of a water line or offer of a point of entry treatment system, depending on what's most practicable for that particular location. I think up until something like that is resolved, any of these folks would be could potentially asked to have their wells sampled, and would have an expectation that Saint-Gobain would be required to do that. But it's a great question you asked. So what happens is once we get to a resolution, once we get a proposed remedy that provides alternate water, whether that's a water line or a point of entry treatment system, there is an expiration date, if you will. So once the water line goes through and the connections are offered and made, or the point of entry treatment system is offered, and then those who accept it get it installed, generally there's been an agreement that once you get past a certain date, and we did this in Litchfield, we had to write to people who weren't responding, and we said, look, you have until such and such a date to decide that you want this, but after that, you're not going to be able to come back 2 years later and say, oh, well, now I want a connection, or now I want a POET. So there is a deadline on that. I don't think we've interpreted it to mean the deadline on sampling, but presumably once a remedy for your neighborhood has been addressed, then that you're going to end up in a place where you're not able to come back and ask for assistance.
Just to follow up, is there any reason why that testing couldn't be done? Why are we waiting until the infrastructure comes in and then decide you're going to ask testing as to determine that somebody has a bad well or doesn't have a bad well? It just seems like if we do the testing of the wells first, that we can get past that phase, and then
sure, yeah.
we would know whether to that something needs to be done, whether it's bottled water or connection or whatever. So I don't know the reason for waiting. for the infrastructure to be laid?
No, to be clear, so that it's a little confusing because there are a few different categories of wells here. So there are about 200 or so wells where the offer to do sampling has not occurred yet. St. Gobain has been doing that through an iterative process where they identify wells based on the data they got in their last round. We expect that with the submission of a couple more addenda, all the folks who have never been offered a sampling will be offered sampling, and with exception of those buffered areas we talked about, and that sampling will get done. So it's our hope over the next few months, everybody where we're not disputing it will have been offered an opportunity to be sampled, and if they want to be sampled, they'd be sampled. The problem we have is there are literally about 1,000 well owners in the consent decree area who have been offered the opportunity to have their well sampled and have declined to have it sampled. And so, you know, we obviously, St. Gobain's not in a position to force their way into the home and obtain a sample. They only do it with consent, right? So what I was trying to answer, I thought what your question was, for those folks, is there a deadline for them to say they want to be sampled? And like I said, I think until a remedy is determined for their neighborhood, we would welcome them coming in and requesting to be sampled. And in fact, the communities have been great on this. They felt that maybe if community leaders, if their town sent them a letter encouraging them to be sampled, that maybe they would be more comfortable and be willing to accept that. And I know that the towns have done that, but I don't honestly know how successful that was. You know, it's hard to say what reasons people might have for not wanting to be sampled. It may be that some of them already have their own home treatment systems and they just don't want to be bothered. I don't know the answer to that, but you know, we can't make we're not in the business of, you know, breaking into people's homes and taking samples. If they don't want to be sampled, they don't have to be sampled.
Understand. Thank you.
Mr. Dunn?
Thank you. Mike, is there any kind of update on the short-term solution for Monadnock? Right now, Monadnock is overwhelmed. Seems like when I call to order water just for myself, sometimes it takes 3 weeks. Is there any discussion about maybe having another company help them? They're very nice people when you call them. They're very friendly. He's very, very good. He just says, I'm overwhelmed. I'm going to try to get you. I've got trucks breaking down. I've got different issues. Any discussion on finding a company to help them out?
Yeah, great question. I know this has been a constant source of frustration for folks, and it's certainly the case that Monadnock they had a very modest home delivery system prior to 2016, and because they had the contract, they needed to come in and really augment it significantly to deal with what is now a very robust, you know, a group of folks who require home delivery. We monitor that week to week, month to month. We do get some complaints, and what is happening, what I would encourage individuals to do if they're calling Monadnock and not getting a response, reach out to us. What has happened in when we have reached out to St. Gobain with individual complaints is what they've often done is actually had their consultant Golder go out and deliver water in real time, so those people aren't waiting for water. It's not, you know, by no means inefficient or a satisfying way to do it, but that's what's happening. We've talked to St. Gobain about potentially bringing on an additional contractor. I think their experience has been they really haven't been able to get anybody who they thought could really do any better than what Monadnock's doing right now. I think, to be honest with you, the real answer is just to get these people their permanent solutions, and that's what we're working to do. The more people we get connected to public water or connected with a point of entry treatment system in their home, that reduces the burden on, you know, the number of homes that need to have bottled water delivery, and presumably makes that easier for Monadnock to serve them effectively. But I'm aware that's a real frustration. We do keep an eye on that. Jeff Martz is, you know, I'm glad to say we're not getting a lot of calls. We get a stray call occasionally, and the way it happens, Jeff will reach out to St. Gobain. They will reach out to Golder, and typically that person gets, you know, delivered some water in a hurry.
Yeah, it's not the fact that they ignore you. Nathan's a great guy. He'll tell you straight up on the phone that he's behind, that his truck is broke down. So I think a lot of people are patient. I was just wondering if there was any discussion about a solution.
Yeah, no, I think it's a real problem because, you know, getting drivers and these days is a very difficult thing. Everybody's having trouble hiring people for any variety of positions, and truck drivers is a particularly difficult one. And that whole business really relies on drivers. So, but no, again, we've explored the idea of getting additional contracting, and that doesn't seem to have worked out.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Wimsatt? I have a few, Mr. Wimsatt. One is regarding the disputed wells. What's the process for resolving that? You said that you're confident that DES will prevail and these wells will be tested, but what does that dispute process look like, and what's the time frame for that?
Yeah, I don't know that I can give you a time frame for it. It basically has to do with us and our attorneys interacting with their attorneys. And, I'm not sure how much depth I can go into on that, but it would be my hope that that's something over the next few months we can get resolved.
Does Saint-Gobain have any evidence that they're not responsible for those well contaminations? I mean, is that part of the,
Sure, it varies. In some cases, there may be, a fire station or some kind of facility where we're aware that there have been releases. So that what ends up happening is that you may have a combination. You could in theory at least, you have a release from two sources, one from a localized source in the area and one from the Saint-Gobain air deposition. And they're taking the position that we should be pressing those other parties to do the sampling. So it's an area of dispute that I don't really want to elucidate too much here in this public setting, but it's something we've got to get resolved.
okay, thank you. And then you mentioned that Saint-Gobain submitted a request for a revised air permit. I don't know if I got that right. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. And again, bear with me. I'm not the air expert. So this is information that Kathy Bean, who is the expert, has provided to me for this update. But basically, as I outlined on our last meeting, we sent about 3 letters, I think, from December and 2 in January, requesting additional information for their application and their monitoring plan. And so in response to those letters from DES, Saint-Gobain submitted a revised application, which included that additional information. And again, that submittal came in on February 28th. So that wasn't in play during our last meeting. So that's the new news. And we're currently reviewing that. The Air Division is reviewing that information and preparing an application review summary, which if you've ever seen one of those, it's a very detailed document that our staff in the Air Division go through to evaluate an application and determine really specific to each and every rule that applies to the permit application, how the permit application either does or doesn't satisfy that requirement. So that can be really helpful. It's pretty dense reading. It can be many pages in some cases, but if you're really interested in understanding how the permit complies with current law, that application review summary will give you a blow-by-blow detailed analysis of each requirement. And that's something that the Air Division staff are currently working on.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question is, you mentioned that there's 8 more residents on bottled water compared to the February number. But have there been any progress made in getting people on permanent solution, either a decision to extend a water line, plans getting in place, or point of entry systems?
Sure, that is precisely what we've been working on very actively over the last several months. And like I say, I don't have an announcement that we're there yet, but I think I'm very optimistic that in the coming weeks we're gonna get to closure on that.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Wimsatt? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wimsatt. And then we're very happy to have Ms. Abigail Rogers sitting in for Dr. Bush today. So Ms. Rogers, do you have an update from DHHS that Dr. Bush passed on to you?
I do. Thank you, Representative Rung. I'm happy to join you today in Katie's place. I have a brief update. I can start with the information that I have regarding the Merrimack cancer investigation. The department continues to convene our cancer concern review team to look at cancer data more closely for determining our focus for the next steps of gathering the information from people related to residential history. At this point, we are still waiting for our team to convene on next steps for that. Just to let the commission know, Katie wanted me to share that we're working as diligently as possible to get that information gathered. But we are hampered a little bit by the fact that we don't have a cancer epidemiologist in position yet. We're working on that very closely, but that just to share that with the commission. And I have some general updates from Katie about PFAS outreach and education initiatives. DHHS will be launching an updated website in May. It will include a dedicated page for PFAS related information. The included resource will be both from state and federal partners, which include New Hampshire DES and ATSDR. In April, DHHS will join DES as part of a panel discussion on PFAS at the Northern New England Nurse Practitioners Conference. This panel is being organized by Peg DiTullio, who is a member of the HB737 Commission, which looks at environmentally triggered chronic disease. And Nancy Murphy will also participate as a community partner. The department continues to receive questions from the community about blood testing, insurance coverage, and available labs. We respond to these concerns in a direct and timely manner with the information that we have available. The DPHS and DES, Environmental Health Integration Team has formed a subgroup to discuss coordinated messaging on these topics so that we are able to share the most relevant and accurate information with the stakeholders in the community. We often point to the existing guidance that for clinicians that ATSDR has put out, as well as a new Department of Insurance fact sheet. And so when we have our new website up with our dedicated page of PFAS resources, we're also going to have all of our PFAS related resources, including those that we have put out related to provider communication. So that's the update that Katie had wanted me to deliver today.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Rogers? Yes, Ms. Murphy.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Abby. Just two questions. Do you know how often that team is going to meet, or when they plan to convene to start? Because I know we're getting phone calls. I know Laureen certainly has. I know I have. I mean, I've had them from Canada and people that have moved out of our community, so have not been counted or diagnosed in either other countries or other states. People are wondering too, when will that team convene? And then you said the epidemiologist is not on board yet. Is that like a position that has to be hired for, or is there just somebody not assigned to that yet?
We have an open position for a cancer epidemiologist. As you may know, Karen Craver was doing some of that work, and she's now at DES. So we've been actively recruiting for that position for a number of months, and are actively looking for someone to fill that role. So any delays and any of the information that we have related to the epidemiology related to cancer, we're working very hard to get that. We certainly work with outside partners in the meantime to try to get that information and work as closely as we can. As far as the, I'm not sure when that group that you discussed is going to convene. I mean, the cancer concern team meets monthly, if not, twice a month if needed. And certainly, if there's an issue that comes up that needs immediate attention, we will convene a meeting for that. But we meet regularly on that.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from Ms. Rogers? Ms. Rogers and Mr. Wimsatt, I don't know where he went, but if you could submit your comments to Ms. Allen and myself to be included, pretty much we just copy and paste them and put them in the minutes. That would be great. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda are subcommittee. Are there any subcommittee reports? Mr. Badazian, no, okay. We kind of need to refresh the subcommittee. So what I took the liberty, I didn't hear from anybody except I think Mr. Dunn. Thank you very much for your reply. But I did just put together a straw man of subcommittee assignments. The environmental subcommittee pretty much stays the same, I believe, with Mr. Bendazian chairing it and Mr. Ayotte, Representative Cretion, and Mr. Wimsatt on that. The health subcommittee is Ms. Mesmer chairs that, along with Dr. Bush, Ms. Costello, Ms. Murphy, and Dr. Woods. And then communications, which is one that we really need to get regrouped because we've lost a couple members. I've asked Ms. Allen to chair that, but I'm going to leave it up if the subcommittee meets to, if they want to have a chair, they can pick someone else if they want. And also Ms. Murphy, Mr. Dunn, Ms. Weber. And also we are in the process of soliciting names for someone to replace Ms. Paradise. That person, we're getting close. That person, I'll ask Senator Daniels to pass along that name, or if he wants several, to Senate President Morse for confirmation. But that's the process for appointing that person to the commission. It's someone who's nominated by a senator on the commission, and then it's confirmed by the Senate President. And then the last committee where I pretty much put everybody else is the policy annual report meeting. And the role of that subcommittee is we look at the feedback from the environmental and the health subcommittee, and we try to identify any needed policies that have to occur from learnings that we've gathered through the year. So that may be a legislative remedy, it may be a proposal for a bill, it may be something that's non-legislative, it may be like holding town halls. That was one of the things that came up in a previous annual meeting, and doing more outreach to the public. So that committee usually will start meeting in September, maybe end of August, and we'll probably have like 2 or 3 meetings to identify those needed policies, and then we start constructing the annual report that goes to the governor, the Senate, and the House. And we work with the communications committee on that. So that's kind of the process of these subcommittees. Those that want a subcommittee meeting, please once you have a date and a time that you want, please work with Ms. Russo at DES to have that posted. What she'll do is she'll schedule the webinar and she'll work with the communications assistant at the House, which is Ms. Heather Goley, to get that on the House calendar. That has to be done at least a week, like 5 days, but count on at least a week to get that, and the sooner the better. The subcommittees may also choose that if you do want to meet in person, she may be able to help you to secure a room, but those rooms are still in use pretty often with standing committees of the House. So we don't take formal minutes of the subcommittees. We just gather notes. So there's somebody who at that meeting is assigned to take the notes, and we do file the notes, but it's not like a formal minutes where that has to have a vote of the subcommittee or the commission. So are there any questions about that? Oh yes, Representative Mooney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Communications Subcommittee, and I know right now we're discussing membership and reviving and so forth, but will that subcommittee also take a look at the format and presentation of some of these online seminars we've had? I know we've had numerous discussions about how information is presented, the timing of both. Could they be consolidated into one to make it more understandable? Perhaps even a discussion about having those online webinars be based on the questions that come to them, as opposed to a formal presentation. You know, it could just be a webinar of questions, since that seems to be so popular. So I guess my question, and it might be long-term, is will the communications or any subcommittee address content of these webinars going forward? Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And we've got several members of that subcommittee on the meeting today, so please take note of that. And even if you're not on a subcommittee, but you want to attend one of their meetings, you're more than welcome to. And if anybody wants to join a subcommittee that I haven't put it on, please let me know. But that's the starting point of the table that I sent out. But the subcommittees are very important. I know Ms. Badazian and Ms. Mesmer, their reports were vital to our annual report and our recommendations. That a lot of the critical work occurs at that subcommittee level. We just wouldn't be able to have enough time for a full commission to go into some of the depth of detail that they go into. Okay, so, and then I suppose when those subcommittees do get noticed, I think I get a notice. I'll make sure to get those out to all the commission members. So if other people want to join, they can. But they're public meetings like this one is. Okay. Anything before I move on? Any more comments on that? Okay. The next item on the agenda is other. The one thing that I want to let you know is I'm planning at our next meeting, which if I look at my calendar, the second Friday in April is the 8th. So we'll plan on at 10 o'clock on the 8th. I'm planning to invite Mr. David Cash. He was recently named the Region 1 Administrator for the EPA. And I feel like I think the EPA is moving along on PFAS, and I don't want to be disconnected to that work. So I'm going to ask him or a delegate from his office to give us an update on what the US EPA is doing in the area of PFAS. I've also had a request to have someone from the New Hampshire Department of Education speak to us about any understanding they have about the impact of PFAS on learning disabilities. I just haven't really identified the right person there yet, but that's also going to be on a future agenda, but I don't think it'll be April. April, I'd like to devote to the EPA administrator. Are there any, Ms. Murphy, did you have a comment?
I did. I just wanted to say that I know that I don't think Katie nor I will be available because that's the same day as our Northern New England Nurse Practitioner Conference.
Oh, okay.
It's the 8th. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not available on the 8th?
Right. Neither will Katie. She and John Vitale will all be. I'm assuming Katie will be doing the presentation along with me up north. I'm sure Dave would probably send somebody else. I'm just saying that I know there'll be a few absences on that day. That's all.
Yeah, it's probably not. What does the commission think about maybe moving from our second Friday? Now, I know Senator Daniels, when do you have that, the Senate Finance Committee meeting? Is that the first Friday?
No, fiscal meets on the third Friday.
Third Friday? We could always move it to April 1st. Does anybody have a objection to that? Ms. Murphy?
I don't have an objection. I was going to say, I didn't mean to switch the date. I know we also have an SB 85 commission meeting. I think we've been doing it the second Friday, and SB 85, I think we've been doing it the third, but there was a question asking us to move to the first. So I'm not suggesting we move it. I think you should probably just leave it the way it is, because otherwise we'd be messing up the other commission as well.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I just wanted you to know that there would be some absences. That's all. That was really my point.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So we'll plan on April 8th. We'll stick to our second Friday at 10 a.m. And Ms. Russo, you could probably consider that ready to be posted if you want to go ahead and go through that process of getting it posted to the House calendar. Okay. Is there any other comments from the commission members? Nope, we're good to go, and we're very happy to have Representative Bohm here. He's gave us a scare. a few weeks ago, so glad you're here with us. All right, seeing none. Oh my gosh, it's 10:51, so that's special. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Murphy moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. All right, second from Representative Healy. Or all those in favor, just raise your hand. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.